Good afternoon. I will call the meeting of the Water Utilities Trust to order. Okay. First item is approval of the minutes from the May 7th, 2019 meeting. Thank you. Thank you. Voting. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's approved unanimously. Next item is the consent docket. Are there any individual considerations?
I'll move approval subject to individual considerations, and specifically I'd like to consider item N, please.
N as in Nancy?
Yes.
Got it.
Based upon a request asking me to study this matter further, I'm going to move to defer item N until our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
All right. So this is solely on item N, the Memorandum of Understanding, and we are voting to defer this item. And it's approved unanimously to defer it.
Now I'd move for approval of the rest of the consent docket.
Thank you. Second. All right, thank you. Now on the remaining items under the consent docket, and those are approved unanimously. Next item is the concurrence docket. Doesn't appear to have any items listed, so we'll move on to item number 5. Items for individual consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item A is our annual capital program. Will be presented by Sam Samandi for your consideration and approval.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and trustees. I'm going to give this presentation on our capital improvement plan for the next 5 years. And as a way of introduction, I should say our capital plan is usually divided into two parts, the water side and the wastewater side. So I'm going to start the water one first. For the next 5 years, there's a total of $942 million that's going to be spent on the water side of our capital plan. This is primarily due to the second Atoka pipeline. It's the raw water supply that governs this particular capital plan, about 69%, $652 million worth of improvements to build the second Atoka pipeline. And also another big major portion of this stuff is the reliability and resiliency projects that we have. We have a lot of old structures that we need to make sure that they're updated and running up to date. So there's a good part of this plan that deals with that as well. And then we have some other general kind of project that keeps up the technology upgrades and other smaller type of projects. On the water supply, we decided to include this particular picture on the slide because it's of really good importance. This is the last joint of pipe on the first Atoka pipeline that was built in 1962. And this is around Tupelo, Oklahoma, somewhere between Colgate and Stonewall. And that a little inscription on there says the last joint 100 miles of Atoka pipeline. That's a pretty good, interesting picture. And then the other picture it's not in California or some other state. It's actually McGee Creek Reservoir. It looks very beautiful. Those are sidelines. But the water supply part of the CIP, as I said, is made up of the Atoka pipeline, the second Atoka pipeline, and also building the existing or rebuilding the existing regulating tanks on the existing line. And then also we're going to start the second part of bringing water from the southeastern part of Oklahoma, from the Kiamichi Basin, Sardis area to Atoka. We're going to start the design in this 5-year program. That's really, really important because we have a agreement and a permit to meet certain deadlines with the construction of that as well. So those are really critical things on this part of the raw water supply. Oops, you. The other part of the capital plan on the water, as we talked about, is the water reliability and resilience. So there's about $269 million worth of work. That's kind of divided into 4 different categories that I've listed there. We're going to spend about $5 million a year taking care of aged infrastructure. That's water lines in the neighborhoods and so on. The amount of money will be substantially increased after we build the second Atoka pipeline, because a lot of money will be available to spend on aged infrastructure in town. As part of attending to that stuff, we're embarking on an asset management program to take a look at everything we have. And we're starting that stuff out with evaluation of large valves. These are valves that are really important, and we need to make sure they operate. And these are valves that are 16 inches and above. We have valves up to 72 inches in our water distribution system, and we need to make sure where they operate and close and open as we need them to. And then we're also going to do a survey and inventory. We need to find out where all of our assets are. And so, because some of the assets, especially if the valves and other things, they're in the streets and, they're covered up usually with paving a lot of times. So we need to find out exactly where they are, and knowing where that infrastructure is help us better run the system and actually model the hydraulic model quite a bit better. And then we've got other facilities improvements. This is really dealing with expansion of the ozone and lime facilities at Hefner Water Treatment Plant, and then also replacement of old clear wells at Draper. And then we also have booster stations in town where we boost the pressures to various places. We have some of the older ones that we're trying to rehab and make sure that they operate when they need to operate correctly. Now, I'm going to switch over to the wastewater side. I'll go back for a minute. The picture is an interesting picture. It's an aerial shot of the North Canadian Wastewater Treatment Plant located around Anderson Road and Memorial in that intersection. It's a beautiful picture of the facility from an aerial aspect. The capital plan on the wastewater side is about $458 million, and most of that stuff, 74% of it, is on reliability and resiliency. That is trying to make sure that all the wastewater treatment plants are operating correctly, and they don't have electrical issues, and the old stuff is updated. And then the other part of that is about 20% of the capital plan, about $91 million, is on regulatory compliance. And that has to do with the expansion of the South Canadian wastewater treatment plant. And then the general, about $30 million worth of technology upgrade and so on. On the resiliency side, just to delve into that a little bit more, because it's a big chunk of that capital plan, we're going to spend about $10 million dealing with aged infrastructure. And that's what we mean by that is essentially a lot of neighborhood projects that needs to be dealt with. And in order to help prioritize all of that stuff, we're doing an asset management, where we're going to go in and evaluate every asset that we have, every manhole, every line segment that's in town. We're going to look at it and see what the useful life of it is and what happens when they fail, so we can prioritize all of our work, all of our capital plan accordingly. So we won't be guessing at, complaint calls or anything like that. It'll be very scientifically done based on actual data. And then we're also, as part of that program, we're going to survey and inventory every one of those manholes and their connectivity to one another, because that's really important to make sure where everything is, because we built a hydraulic model of the wastewater system based on that information. And we also have a lot of improvement, I mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of electrical upgrades at the wastewater treatment plants. Wastewater treatment plants, for example, North Canadian is getting about 40, 50 years old now. A lot of the stuff is from original construction, so they all need to be looked at and upgraded for sure. And then we also have close to 75 lift stations in town, so some of them are getting older. They need to get rehabbed and upgraded. So there's money to accommodate that. On the regulatory side, as I said, the South Canadian wastewater treatment plant is the big one. And that's because the existing capacity of the plant is not enough to handle the flows that are coming in. And then also the discharge limit, discharging into the river and stuff, the limits have gotten a lot more stringent than they used to be. So we're having a much better treatment process and a different treatment process and a bigger plant. And then also we are putting a large relief interceptor just south of the river here, and as part of meeting our requirements of the consent order that we have with the Oklahoma DEQ. So if you put together both water and wastewater, the total is about $1.4 billion worth of work for the next 5 years. That's close to about $280 million on the average every year. That's a pretty good click. And we hope that we would accomplish all of that stuff as we have promised. So I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Very nice report. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Mr. Chairman, item B is the proposed capital, or the proposed operating.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could I have a motion to approve item number 2? Okay, thank you. Voting, and it's approved unanimously. Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Item B is the annual operating budget for the Water Utilities Trust. Brett Weingart is here to give you an overview of that one for your consideration.
Good afternoon, trustees. When you look at the budget for the Water Utilities Trust, we focus on striving to fulfill promises and commitments that we've made through the trust and the city, orienting our budget and our capital plan around these initiatives. The first is safety. We want to make sure that we operate safely for our employees and for the public. The second one is customer service. As evidenced by the ETC studies, we've striven to be setting the margin on what the utilities can expect, what the customers can expect for excellent service in every way. In water supplies, as Sam Samandi has spoken of, we're extending our water supply to make sure we have water supply through 2060. System resiliency and reliability. Our recent weather conditions have shown that we never know what's going to come next. We want to make sure we have people and infrastructure that can meet any demands for resiliency and reliability no matter what happens. Financial management, that we manage the utility in such a way that we can afford to do what needs to be done to well maintain the assets, pay the people, and meet our obligations. Regulatory compliance, we are regulated by many different entities. One of those is the EPA, and through the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality, the Public Employees Safety and Health Organization through the Department of Labor for the state of Oklahoma, otherwise known as PEOSH, and other organizations that have to do with water treatment, wastewater treatment, air quality, and employee safety. And what we provide is service to the public. We budget both revenues and expenses, sources and uses in our budget. On the sources side, you'll see that we have about $277 million of service charges made up of water service charges, wastewater service charges. We're budgeting the receipt of debt funding from commercial paper that will turn into permanent financing, $239 million. Withdrawals from cash reserves that we have in the last 2 years stored up some cash in reserves for the South Canadian Wastewater Treatment Plant project and the first project that we will award for the Atoka Pipeline project. System development charges that we charge for water and wastewater connections to the system, and non-ratepayer revenues. Next slide. On uses, you see how we're going to expend those sources through capital improvements of $387 million, $91 million is our anticipated transfer to the city operation to fund employee salaries and associated costs. Service contracts to Infomark for operation and maintenance of the wastewater treatment plants of $18 million. Debt service of $53 million. Trust operations for other activities that we fund of $30 million. Non-ratepayer activities matching the million that we get. Non-ratepayer activities of $1 million. McGee Creek operations of approximately $1 million. On customer service, a number of initiatives have been proposed as a part of our city budget and trust budget to fulfill the promises we spoke of earlier under the initiatives. One is the call center processes will allow the identifying, routing, and monitoring of escalated calls. So we're going to tier the call taking so that we can escalate it to more skilled agents to more quickly answer calls or proficiently resolve customer concerns more quickly. And we're going to have computer software to allow us to track our performance in that area so we can make improvements over time in training and such. Field operations, we're going to work on improving our ability to resolve inquiries in the field when we go out and meet customers about high bills or leaks or things like that. We're going to improve that area also. We're going to improve work management issues where we are going to propose 2 planner schedulers, one in wastewater quality and one in fleet services, so we can more efficiently use the people resources that we have and also the equipment. Next slide, water supply, same picture again. We're going to propose a Southeast Oklahoma water supply superintendent to coordinate and be a liaison with Oklahoma City staff, MCA staff, the Bureau of Reclamation, the Corps of Engineers, and contractors working on the second Atoka pipeline so we can smooth that out and manage that well as we go forward with this project. Next slide. System reliability. Enhanced operations plan, we're looking at the way that we operate the water treatment facilities. Our goal is to make sure that we have a responsible management supervisor on every shift 24/7. That's not the way we currently operate today. Our proposal is to migrate to that, which is a requirement of DEQ. Next slide. Regulatory compliance. We're proposing adding 2 people to help work on our fats, oils, and grease program. We currently have 1. We have stoppages related to fats, oils, and grease, restaurants, and things like that, and we need to have more intensified efforts in that area so fewer people experience backups of sewage into their business or their home by better managing what is discharged from these commercial establishments into the sewer system. The next is we're going to work on reclassifying meter maintenance employees. As you recall, last year we focused on bringing our line maintenance folks into compliance with DEQ regulations. We're working now on the meter maintenance on phase 2. So they have a Class C operator's license. When you look at a summary of all of these changes, we're able to do so with a 2.6% change and the addition of 6 proposed positions, which is less than 1% added staffing to our department. And with that, we'd open it up to any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you. Okay, I think we need to vote on this. Okay, thank you. Any questions? We're voting, and it's approved unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your support.
Now, are there any items from council? Jessica? Oh, not council. Trust. I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. Chris, I'll turn it back to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, all of our lakes are overfull except for Atoka, and we're keeping it down on purpose, or it probably would be too. Lakes here in the city are about a foot above full pool. Canton's about 3 feet above full pool. McGee Creek is 5 or 6 feet above full pool. Sardis is above full pool as well. With that said, we have a lot of water. We're not selling as much as we'd like, but we probably will later in the year. Brett's still not nervous, so that's a good thing. The lakes are in great shape. If you've been out to see any of them, you'll notice that not only are they full, but they're relatively clear. So that's a good thing as well. We are working on a project at Draper to limit the runoff from around the concession stand, and that project's coming along very well. We're replacing a lot of the landscaping and the paving areas with better landscaping and more pervious areas, so we won't get so much runoff. And that's going to really help with the turbidity in the lake as well. The more turbid the lake is, the more it costs us per unit to treat. So it's a good thing for us to bring the color of that water down as much as possible. We're also paving the parking lot and the street there by the boat ramps, so that'll help too. We won't have all that runoff getting into the lake there. Both of those projects should be completed sometime next month. The pro forma, we are down a bit on our estimated revenues by about $6.4 million. We're also down a bit on the operating expenses. We're down about $7.9 million for water. On the wastewater side, we are pretty close to what we expected on the revenues, and the same, a little below target on the expenses, about $1.5 million. So we're still in pretty good shape as far as our anticipated revenues and expenses go. So the next item, if you recall, I mentioned that we were going to receive a national award, and we did. Kyle, you want to come up, talk about this for just a second? Kyle Drury, CP&Y, they are the design engineers on the project where we received the award.
Thank you, Chris. Trustees, we were ecstatic to receive a National Engineering Excellence Award for the Hefner Sludge Improvement Project. Thank y'all for attending, Mr. Browning, Miss Martinez Brooks, and we had a really good event. It was well attended. There was over 900 people in attendance, which actually set the record. So definitely excited about moving forward with this project and the benefits that it provides, and I look forward to some future projects with y'all. So with that, I'll take any questions. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Kyle. So, Trustee Martinez Brooks, any comments about your experience?
Really impressed with the all different projects and the information being highlighted, and ours is one of those, so I think it really speaks to what we're doing here in the city of Oklahoma City and the partnership that we have with business and public service. So thank you all for inviting me.
We really appreciate you taking your time to go to Washington and be a part of the presentation, so thank you very much. Last thing is our most recent Standard & Poor's and Moody's rating. We have a document here, I think we handed everybody the document, where we are increasing our commercial paper credit line, and so we were re-rated by Standard & Poor's and Moody's relative to the commercial paper, and they also gave us reaffirming our rating for the long term as well, and they rated us as high as we could get in both areas. Now, most recently, the rating agencies have started looking at not only the financial stability of the organization, but also the operations. And they have a rating scale that they use now, 1 to 6 for financial stability and 1 to 6 for operations, 6 being the lowest, 1 being the highest, and we rated a 1 in both categories. And the narrative that came along with their rating was very complimentary to Oklahoma City and the leadership here in Oklahoma City, in the way we run our organization. So they were very pleased with all the information that we provided to them, both through documents and conversations that we had with them. So they were, it didn't take them long to decide, which was also pretty complimentary for Oklahoma City. So we turned this around pretty quickly, and staff, Billy Little, did a really good job providing them everything they need, and he worked with them diligently to get this rating in time for us to go ahead and get our increase in our commercial paper beginning in June. So thank you very much to staff, and that's the end of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, very good news. Thank you, Chris. All right. Any citizens to be heard? Okay, we're adjourned.